Hello, everybody. This is Fernando for the latest urban legend of the week. Well, I came across this suggestion actually in the Cryptids and Monsters latest round of suggestions, and in looking at the information, I thought to myself, maybe this is more along the lines of an urban legend because of the status of this being more like a boogeyman of some sort that allegedly still, I guess, haunts certain places to this very day, rather than say a monster or some kind of cryptid that seems to be just roaming certain parts of the world. After you hear this information, I think you might actually come to the same conclusion as I did as well. But it's still pretty fascinating information. This is a legend of sorts that seems to be in Peru and other areas close by to that location. Even so, to this very day, it's so prominent, the idea of this boogeyman figure, that if you can believe it, some real world applications from the likes of I guess, U.S. Food for Peace type programs, those that give out international assistance, those have been affected because of this boogeyman legend. And it has to do with this thing known as the Pishtaco, which you're looking at a picture of here. Now, there's two areas that this urban legend permeates from when it comes to the Pishtaco. There's the idea that it's either a set of real world people that take on this boogeyman figure. And then finally, there's the other idea that it's more along the lines of some kind of man-like creature instead. So lots of good info to share. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. So what is this urban legend known as the Pishtaco? Well, again, it all has to do with the notion of it being a boogeyman of some sort. It's very, very popular to state, I guess, this urban legend there in the regions of South America. I mentioned Peru, but also Bolivia, and this has been around for hundreds of years. In fact, since apparently like the 1500s, stories of this urban legend have been recorded, especially by people that have been traveling to those areas, in this case Europeans, who may have inadvertently been the cause of this boogeyman legend. So here's how it goes. I'll give a brief history though of something fascinating associated with South America, and then that'll give you an idea of how it leads to this fish taco. So way back when, again going back a couple hundred years or so, the idea was that the body fat that you and I have, was at that time considered a luxury. Like it was something to be considered very nice to have, something to be cherished, as opposed to today, whenever it comes to anything involving fat, it's considered more of a hindrance or something damaging to your body, and that everybody wants to be skinny nowadays. But back then, it was the opposite. Everyone that was skinny, it was considered to have bad health, anything involving illnesses, just basically a bad thing overall. But those that had fat associated with their bodies, they were viewed as having let's say signs of a good life, good health, strength, and beauty. So quite fascinating when you think about it. How times change when it comes to that kind of stuff makes you wonder how much of it truly is people changing, or how much of it is, let's say, marketing and the power of branding and companies that can force these changes onto people. In any case, tying to that was the idea that there were conquistadors that were roaming those areas way back when, and it was their practice, again involving fat, to be able to take the anything as far as the corpses of their enemies, taking their fat and then essentially treating their wounds with it. I guess it was seen as some kind of, not ritual, but something along the lines of maybe like it was a conquest. That's was, I guess, their winning reward to do something along those lines. Also, it was another way to ensure that it was a prize of some sort, I guess, when it came to their conquest. But those people that were there in those locations, there in Peru, there in Bolivia, other parts of South America, they were of course horrified to have seen this, because here these conquistadors are coming in some cases a lot of them being Europeans, being of lighter skinned as well, and they were seeing this practice and thinking to themselves, oh my goodness, this is something else entirely different. They're killing us and then purposely, in this case, boiling corpses, hanging them on top of things, essentially ensuring that the body fat would be rendered all the way towards the bottom, collected, placed into some kind of bottles, and then used for other purposes, I guess, either besides treating their wounds with it, but also the idea was they were taking this fat and then using them for their church bells, also using them for their machinery, and in other cases too, just selling them outright to other Europeans, I guess for who knows what other purposes. But that's where the urban legend at least first started. It was these practices and every idea involving body fat being a very prized item way back when. So, much like that game involving talking from one ear to another, word of this eventually, it seems like, spread out, and then that's when like the boogeyman concept came about. And first, let's talk about the status of it being from people thinking that other people are these boogeymen. They eventually began to, for example, the people that lived there began to associate Spanish missionaries as being the people that were originally killing others for this fat. And so anytime someone saw like a Spanish missionary around, that was to them the Pishtaco. That was to them the person or set of persons that were purposely hunting people, their people, to try to ensure that they could get this prize set of fats. Or collections of fats as well. So much so that it was again something involving stories about these European invaders, and then especially finding these Aborigines, whoever these local natives were there, as inferior people, and it stayed all the way to this very day. I mentioned earlier that there were some real-world applications such as the U.S. Food for Peace and other type of international assistance programs. This belief in Pishtacos has stayed for so long, up until this very day, that if you can believe it, several communities still within South America reject these international assistance programs because they believe that the whole purpose of these is to actually fatten people, so that way their fat could later be exploited some way with regards to this Pishtaco. Isn't that crazy? The idea that something like that, like a fat farm of some sort, is being conducted to this very day. I mean, that's their belief because everything is tied to the hundreds of years of this Pishtaco urban legend. Also, geologists have been attacked by some of the people still living there within South America, a lot of the natives, because they believe that they are the Pishtacos, like their version now of the Spanish missionaries. Those geologists trying to, I guess, track and then make sure that they can spot land and then record it. They're thinking to themselves, oh no, it is the Pishtaco. And then anthropologists as well, others have been associated with this Pishtaco legend too. So pretty interesting stuff. When I was reading this information, I was thinking to myself, wow, the idea that something like this is still occurring. But then reading the legends tied all the way to the 1500s, and then realizing that all those hundreds of years this stuff just passes by generation by generation when it comes to the original beliefs of those natives from way back when, then I can kind of see how those two are tied together. So at least again, that's the notion involving real people believing other real people are these Pishtacos. By the way, that name Pishtaco comes from a derivation or of the word pishte, which means to behead, cut the throat, or cut into slices. Because this also, if you're looking at the more sinister side of the Pishtaco notion, it's the idea that besides the body fat, the body itself is used for cannibalistic purposes, where these victims of the Pishtacos are cut up into tiny pieces, their flesh sold as fried chicharrones. If you have ever eaten chicharrones, those are some pretty good stuff, but in this case, it's the notion that these chicharrones are actually not from pigs, but from people themselves. So that's, I guess, the more horrifying, the more sinister side of this thing. And then finally, I was mentioning the other side is involving the urban legend of this being truly some kind of monster of some sort. And in those cases, it's more along the lines of something, I guess, human looking, but more monster like, something that essentially hunts people, traps them, I guess, in the wilderness, whatever is the case, and then sucks out their fat. Like they have an actual apparatus of some sort, either within their mouth or some other part of their body, that almost like a suction cup can essentially lapse on to the victim and then sucks their body outright. Now, it doesn't kill the person, because apparently, in reading that information, the idea is that they don't necessarily do it to kill someone to death, which kind of makes sense, because if that's the case, then quickly, like, these things would have no more victims to utilize. But no, instead, it's almost like a mosquito, a parasite of some sort. Like, these things are able to, I guess, find someone, attack them, not kill them, but just enough, I guess, damage them just enough, creates little marks, I guess, little suction cups, to ensure that they can suck out some of the fat, and then they move on to the other one. So just think of like your average mosquito with these monsters, but much larger, in this case a humanoid side, and that is how they operate. No known, of course, photographs or anything like that tied to this side when it comes to the monster side, but still, it's enough that if you can believe it, in 2009 there was reports of like a gang of Pishtacos roaming certain areas of South America, so much so that the Peruvian police were involved, and they had to actually go deep into the jungles of a place called Huanaco, if I'm not mistaken, if that's how it's said, and try to find out, what's going on, because there was a little bit of pandemonia within those areas, with people believing that there truly was some kind of gang of Pishtacos roaming around, that they were bludgeoning victims, that they would dismember them, they would hang the corpses upside down and so forth, whether they were tied to something involving these monsters or real people, who knows, but still, it was enough for the police to get involved. It turns out it was more along the lines of a hoax later on, but still, there was this notion, even in 2009, that Pishtacos were still around. So what do you guys think? Lots of fascinating information tied to this urban legend. To me, absolutely the best part is how even today, communities within those regions will reject these international programs because of their belief in the Pishtacos, and how insane it just ties in to the notion from 500 years ago that there was, I guess, these conquistadors and others utilizing and cherishing fat at that time. So pretty fascinating stuff. If anyone knows any more information tied to this, please post those comments below. That would be really great to hear. Anybody from those regions that knows of this lore, of this urban legend, it seems like it was something that's quite common down there. So if anyone has such information tied to that, that'd be really good to hear too. So alright, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.